Are you sure you want to hear this story, my love? I could tell you something sweet, something harmless, but I know you better than that. This tale is different. It is old, forgotten, perhaps even cursed. Those who hear it don't quite sleep the same way again. You know those stories where good things happen to good people? Well, this isn't one of them. If, however, you have a peculiar fascination with tragic fates, forbidden desires, and people making irreversible mistakes, then by all means, listen. I see you quite interested, my love. Very well, but don't say I didn't warn you. There was a man once. He was a scholar, a seeker of forgotten things, a man who walked the line between curiosity and caution. And one night, in the city of Luthadel, a place of veiled opulence where shadows stretched long and whispered secrets carried weight, he walked too far, and it was there, at the infamous Palace of Aenoth, that his fate was sealed. The Palace of Aenoth stood on the outskirts of Luthadel, an estate untouched by time. It was said to have belonged to a long-forgotten noble house, its halls now repurposed for indulgence, mystery, and selective revelry. Those who entered did so without names, surrendering their past for a night of anonymity. The air within was thick with the scent of burning myrrh and forbidden desires, and it was here, among masked figures and whispered propositions, that he first saw her. She had no name, or rather, she gave a different one each time. Some called her Serafina, others Isolde, and sometimes Lilith. She had been seated alone, draped in shadows and candlelight, an untouched glass of wine resting between her fingertips. He remembered the way she had looked at him, as if she had been expecting him all along.
You linger at the edges, a man caught between curiosity and caution. Tell me, which will win?
He hadn't answered, or rather, he hadn't needed to. The moment their eyes met, he had already chosen. Their first night had been feverish, an unspoken storm of hunger and secrets. He remembered the way her hands had mapped him like a cartographer, tracing lost lands, the way her breath had stolen rational thought from his mind. They had whispered things into the dark that neither dared repeat in daylight. The second night he returned to her with a bouquet of scarlet roses. She was waiting, as if she had known he would. This time there was no masquerade, no pretense of games, only a room filled with the heady scent of burning incense and a promise written in her gaze. They spoke less that night, their words unnecessary, their bodies weaving something older than language. But it was on the third night that the world tilted. She greeted him differently, her smile laced with something deeper, satisfaction perhaps.
You're different from the others. They all run after the first night. Only a few come to visit me the second night. And yet, here you are.
This time she asked if he had ever heard of the Velvet Room, then extended a hand, pale, slender, waiting. The air between them buzzed with an unnamed energy. He took it. She led him through corridors, deeper into the Palace of Aenoth. The walls murmured as they passed, faint whispers curling at the edges of hearing. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, laced with a scent he could not name but recognized nonetheless. Something sweet, intoxicating, laced with the faintest hint of decay. At last, they stopped before a door, black velvet draped across it like a curtain. Her fingers brushed against his as she pulled it open. Inside, the world shifted. Reality bled at the edges. The air was thick, perfumed with something intoxicating, something forbidden. And in the center of the room, a mirror. Not just any mirror, no reflection, only shadows that moved on their own. "Tell me," she murmured, pressing close, breath warm against his ear. "What do you see?" He looked and looked, and then he understood. The mirror did not reflect him. Instead, it started to devour him. The longer he stared, the weaker he felt, as if something unseen was draining the breath from his lungs. He turned to her, suddenly unsteady. Her beauty was shifting, unraveling. The flawless porcelain of her skin grew pale and ashen. Wrinkles crawled along her face like cracks in marble. Her lips thinned. In place of the enchanting woman he had met stood something ancient, weathered and withered, a thing barely clinging to its own existence.
One life for one life. The mirror takes what it is given, your youth for mine.
He staggered back, horror creeping into his limbs. The others, the lovers before him, they had not simply vanished. They had been consumed, swallowed whole so that she could remain untouched by time. She stepped forward, each movement slow, deliberate.
You are already chosen, but you can fight if you wish. They always do.
Panic surged through him, and he turned, only to see the door behind him had vanished. The walls twisted, shifting like living things. The mirror pulsed, its surface rippling like liquid shadow. His body felt heavy, his vision blurring. He fought to move, to resist, but her laughter, low and knowing, wrapped around him like silk.
It's over. Say goodbye, my love.
He lunged, reaching for her, for anything, but his own hands betrayed him. His reflection reached out in return, and before he could scream, the glass swallowed him whole. She straightened, rolling her shoulders as if shedding an old cloak. The transformation reversed, youth blooming once more across her features. The room shifted back into its pristine elegance, the shadows fading. And where he had stood, the mirror only showed a faint shimmer, one more soul, lost in its depths. Outside the Palace of Aenoth, the world continued as it always had. But something had changed. In Luthadel, no one could recall the man who had once been. His home stood untouched, his books unread, his work unremembered. No records bore his signature. No friends recalled his presence. Even the whispers of the palace refused to speak his name. It was as if he had never been born. "You're quiet, my love. What's wrong? You look as if you've seen a ghost." "Oh, don't worry, my love. I wouldn't dream of anything dangerous. You're safe with me, I promise." "What? Another tale, you say? Well, in that case, subscribe to this channel and share this video with your friends. By the way, it's getting late. Perhaps we should rest. Unless, of course, you'd rather do something else. After all, you do seem rather tense, and I'd hate for you to go to bed like that. But first, I expect my goodnight kiss. Come closer. I promise it won't hurt."
Your smile seems perfect from afar, but something's different than before.